The reunion of Gao Tu and Shen Wenlang was never meant to be simple. It was never meant to be peaceful. Because when love is built on pride, and pride is mixed with silence, what's left is not romance. It's tragedy. Shen Wenlang had always admired Gao Tu's backbone, that stubborn streak of pride that set him apart from others. He wasn't like the countless people who chased Shen Wenlang for money, status, and power. Gao Tu had dignity. He had fire. That was why Shen Wenlang loved him. That was why he held on to him. But that same pride became the very weapon that destroyed them both. Shen Wenlang still remembered that day. The day his colleagues joked that they would only stay in the company if they got shares. And Gao Tu, of all people, had laughed and joined in. It pierced Shen Wenlang's heart like a knife. He didn't want Gao Tu to be like the others, chasing him for money. He wanted Gao Tu to love him for who he was. Not for what he had, but Gao Tu, unknowingly, had made him feel cheap. And Shen Wenlang, in his arrogance, never told him the truth. He didn't say, "I hate omegas. But if it's you, Gao Tu, I'll love you like crazy." He didn't confess, "I don't like children. But if it's your child, I'd never let anyone hurt him." Instead, silence grew between them. Misunderstandings piled higher and higher until one day, Gao Tu was gone. Now, 3 years later, fate placed them together again. But this was not a sweet reunion. It was bitter. Because the Omega he loved more than life itself was now standing in front of him, holding a child. A child that Shen Wenlang should have protected. A child that carried his own blood. And when Gao Tu lowered his proud head, when he begged him in a trembling voice not to hurt their child, that was the moment Shen Wenlang felt as if he had swallowed poison. He had always thought Gao Tu would never bow. But here he was, lowering himself, humbling himself, for the sake of his son. Shen Wenlang wanted to scream, to turn back time. Back to the day when Gao Tu had asked him, "What will you do if your Omega has a child one day?" Back to the day when Gao Ming had said mockingly, "If you want us to abort, give me 10 million, not a penny less." If only he had answered then. If only he had said the words that were trapped in his chest. Maybe none of this would have happened, but it was too late. Now, all he could do was watch. Watch as Gao Tu stood before him like a wounded soldier, protecting a child that should have been theirs together. Compared to the heavy tension between the adults, the children were a different story. Peanut, the little one who had always been spoiled with love, hated sadness. He saw the gloom on his godfather's face, saw the sorrow that made Shen Wenlang look like he had bitten into sour plums. And in his innocent way, Peanut climbed up onto his godfather's lap, raised himself to be the same height as Gao Lele, and began to speak in his childish, sweet voice. "I'm sorry for bumping into you just now, but your mask is so pretty. Can you lend it to me?" Gao Lele hesitated. He was shy, reserved, but he couldn't bring himself to reject the little dumpling in front of him. Slowly, he removed his mask and handed it over. And in that simple, innocent moment, something shifted. Shen Wenlang looked at Gao Lele, and his world stopped. The bitterness on his tongue dissolved into sweetness. The sour plum turned into a ripe apricot, because in front of him in Gao Tu's arms was a child who looked exactly like him. No DNA test was needed. No words were necessary. One look at that face, and the truth screamed louder than anything else. Shen Wenlang didn't need a report to tell him this was his son, his blood, his flesh, his child. The urge to scoop the boy into his arms, to kiss him again and again, was overwhelming. But instead, he sat frozen, trapped between regret and joy. 3 months later, life had changed. But Gao Lele was troubled. He noticed things children weren't supposed to notice. His father, Gao Tu, had started disappearing in the middle of the night. And though Gao Lele was too young to understand fully, he could sense that something had shifted. Oddly enough, even though it wasn't the season for sage or iris to bloom, he often smelled their fragrance in the air at night. A fragrance that made him feel calm, safe, and strangely happy. One night, after eating too much watermelon before bed, Gao Lele woke up to use the bathroom. On his way back, he heard voices coming from the living room. He peeked out and saw something that made his little heart skip. The curtains were drawn, the lights dim. The new neighbor, the one who had moved in next door, was there, smiling, teasing, his voice soft, coaxing, almost begging. One more kiss. Just once. And Gao Tu, his proud, serious father, lowered his voice, telling him not to make noise, not to wake Lele. The neighbor pouted, clinging to him like a spoiled cat. Then come next door later. Wait until the little one's asleep. And then Gao Tu kissed him. A light kiss, but real, intimate. To anyone else, it would look like betrayal. But Gao Li's something. The scent in the air was stronger than ever. Sage and iris. Familiar. Comforting. Because that neighbor wasn't just anyone. It was Shen Wenlang. Lele hurried back to his bed before his father saw him. But he couldn't sleep. His small chest was pounding, and his mind was racing. When Gao Tu later came in, gently tucking him under the blanket, Lele opened his eyes. His voice was soft, but certain. Dad, if you want to go next door, you can. You don't have to wait until I fall asleep. And in that moment, his childish words carried a truth beyond his years. Because deep down, Lele already knew. He knew his father's secret. He knew who his real father was. And he knew that soon his name might not be Gao Lele anymore. It might be Shen Lele, because destiny, no matter how cruel, no matter how delayed, always finds a way to bring blood back to blood, and love back to love. And that was how Gao Tu and Shen Wenlang's painful reunion unfolded, full of regret, sorrow, and yet a fragile hope for tomorrow. Love is complicated. It wounds, it heals, it tears people apart, and sometimes it quietly brings them back together. For Gao Tu and Shen Wenlang, their reunion was not gentle, not sweet. It was raw, painful, and filled with regrets that could never be erased. But in the middle of all that pain, there was also something pure, something unshakable. A child who carried both of their blood and the undeniable bond that neither pride nor silence could ever destroy. Perhaps it's true. No matter how far we run, no matter how many mistakes we make, destiny always finds a way to tie us back to the people we were meant to love. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next part of the Abo Desire series. Until then, remember this. Some loves are painful, but they are still worth everything.